I'm going to let you start with this is episode 5 of The Last of Us. We have 4 episodes left. And as we typically do when we start these reviews, I want to know your general thoughts on the episode.
It definitely was better than the last one. That's for sure.
Yeah, I agree.
At first, when I finished it, I was like, nice. It ended. I mean, the first part was just. I guess there's just been so much build up. It just feels like more build up. You know what I mean? I'm not necessarily invested. I think I said last week it was just missing that key element to draw me into the story.
Yeah.
And like that, I don't know, that spark. Like, I enjoy the production design. I enjoy the writing in it. It could definitely be better. I don't know. I think it's just I've seen so many of the zombie movies and TV shows in that style, and I think I told you that before. And when we reviewed the first episode, that my main concern was this is just going to be another kind of Walking Dead rehash.
Yeah.
And it still seems that way. I'm like, why did we have episode 3? Regardless of what you think about the episode, whether if you thought it was good or bad, I think it's like it just seems pointless, especially at this point. I enjoyed the ending. I should say I enjoyed when the infected finally came. It's like nice. We finally got some like the engines revved up, and we were going. But
yeah,
took
a while.
We
had the clickers. We had the clickers. To be fair, we had the clickers.
Yeah, we did have the clickers, and that's what I mean. I want to see more of the threat of the infected versus the humans. It's not, again, you still can't have those elements, but my kind of whole thing was, I don't know. I just don't understand why we spent episode 3 where we were, and even with episode 4. A lot of that. It seems like this could have been condensed and you could have had a much better episode 3 if you combine 4 and 5. Mm-hmm. Somehow. And again, even
you
with
could have.
Even with the PTA lady that leads in the apocalypse, right?
Dude.
That's what every time I think I'm like, that's your local PTA leader right there. I just don't see her leading a group. I can't remember if they gave a reason in the show, but she's not the type of woman that I could see leading a city. Like, especially you're thinking about in the apocalypse, people are going to be a lot worse than they are now. And it's, who is she? What has she done? And why does everybody want her specifically to be the leader? And I don't think they did a good job at all showing that and detailing that. Well, I just thought, oh, she's the leader. Okay, great. Because of her brother was this great man. Hey, we're with you. Why are you with her? Who cares? You should be in the charge. You're the one with the gun. And it seems like you make a lot better decisions than she does too.
Yeah, except when it came to the bloater.
Yeah.
At the end, it was like, I still don't. So, Craig Mazdan, right? The guy he's the showrunner for this.
Yes.
He did Chernobyl. Everybody loves Chernobyl. He is definitely, his focus is drama.
Right.
And you needed, at the very least, maybe not a co-director. Maybe an associate who's like under Craig, who's directing the action. Because it's still kind of weak. Like, I appreciate it. There's stuff about this episode I really appreciate. I actually really like Sam and Henry. I like the stuff at the end for the most part. This is such a confusing thing for me. I'm just annoyed at this point when Joel and Ellie aren't the focus of this show.
Right.
It bothers me. And I'm still not big on Ellie's actress, whose name is slipping my mind right now.
Bella Ramsey.
Thank you. I'm still not big on Bella Ramsey. It's just one of those things that it's like she's there and you kind of deal with it. And someone had mentioned this in one of our comments where it's like she just keeps making these like snarky quips, or she's trying to be funny, and in a lot of these scenes when she's not just being like angsty, and it doesn't work. It's not that endearing. There are moments when it works. I think that like the stuff with her and with Sam and Ellie in this episode was good. But the thing, and I was talking to Jenna about this in one of the streams, the Harry Potter streams the other day, I think some of it is because I have an emotional connection to the characters in the video game. And that's why I said, like, when we first started doing these reviews, that I am biased in these. I can't not be at this point. Right. And so when certain things are happening in the show, I go, oh, I like this, but it's because it's an emotional connection to the game because they're actually getting that right on the live action side.
Right.
I think you're correct about the PTA lady. I think it's the weakest part of the last 2 episodes. They could have cut her out of the story completely and combine these into 2. Like, if you were gonna do 2 episodes specifically about this, Sam and Henry should have been in both episodes.
Yeah, way more interesting.
You would have been able to build that connection because they even say it, and this is how it is in the game. You spend quite a bit of time with Sam and Henry, so it works out roughly the same. So, like, what you see in the show, other than Sam being deaf, I'm pretty sure Sam's his brother, right?
Yes.
Okay. It's for whatever reason, so other than Sam being deaf, it's very similar. A lot of the similar circumstances, they get a lot of those beats correct with that. But I don't know how you felt about it. And again, this comes from me having played the games. So again, that emotional connection is there to the games. Was the like ending for the 2 of them? Did that hit you? Did it work for you?
No, I mean, oh man, like yes and no, if that makes sense.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like somewhat, but not really.
Okay.
It's just kind of, I don't really like the direction this has gone with. At the end of episode 3, we have this assisted suicide is okay. And then we get this episode and it's just a blatant suicide because of this, you know. I think I enjoyed both actors for Henry and Sam, but specifically Henry. I think you hit the nail on the head. You know, they could have cut out the PTA lady and or at least if they even wanted to keep her, just not focus on her as much. Just focus more on Henry and Sam, and then, you know, Joel and Ellie, like all of them together.
Yeah.
But yeah, that ending, it seemed forced, you know. It seemed fast. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It just didn't feel earned.
I kind of agree. It goes by pretty quick, and I think that the events of the game,
I think the problem with that.
Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think,
more context.
I think that, the events of the game give you enough of that time because there is that like physical aspect of you kind of putting yourselves in Joel's shoes during the situation, and there's stuff that happens, but you see the connection that Sam and Ellie have, and they kind of get that in this, but it just, I'd have to go back and play through that section again in the game, but there's just a lot of that, and then the brutality and the how quickly everything goes down in the game at the end of like what you see at the end of this episode, and then essentially what happens in the game is that right after Henry does that, and I'm being vague on purpose for now.
Right.
Right after Henry does that, game cuts, and you transition to like a couple months down the road where you know, so you get like a boom, and then you're like, you don't even get like time to process before it's like, oh man, we're in a totally different thing now. And you get to sort of see some stuff happening with Joel and Ellie, and it kind of implies that the situation that happened with the 2 of them is the thing that finally kind of brought the 2 of them together, and that they're on the same page. So I'll be interested to see what happens in the next episode.
Right.
Though I've heard some things.
Yeah, you heard it's not good.
That I won't say that. Just some of the plot points that I'm kind of like, ooh, we'll see how that goes. Not to mention that the town. Did you watch the trailer for this? The next episode?
No, I haven't yet. Dang. Okay.
So it's Tommy centric. It's where they're headed, and the town that they're in is designed very similarly to the one from The Last of Us Part 2. I was just like, and that's not in the game. And I guess I understand why they're making the change. Well, I understand why they're making the change on a few different levels. But if I was trying to be like, again, trying to steel man for him a little bit, in the game, you meet Tommy at this like abandoned electrical plant. It's like water, like a hydro plant.
Right.
And so I think they're changing, at least on some level, they're changing it because that would be a really difficult location to get when you could just do the town and put the drama through that, and then the town gets attacked or whatever. But it's also because I think this next episode's confirming that they're going exactly where we all thought they were with the show. It's that little thing in there that I'm like, yeah, that's the town. That's that's where we pick up in the second game. It's here.
And you're like, no.
Yeah, I was like, we're getting a step closer. But for now, continuing to go on with this, one of the other things that I'm gonna jump ahead just a little bit, quite a bit actually. So I wanna jump ahead to this specific section where they are getting out of the town and there's a sniper in the house.
Mm-hmm.
And
of course.
Yeah, he goes. Joel's like, all right, I'll deal with it. It's like the guy's got bad aim and it's dark, so I should be able to take care of this, and he does. It makes sense. I think it's logical. And I was actually talking to Justin about this, and I can't remember. I think he might have brought it up, but the conversation was basically about how they are spending way too much time in this show trying to make you sympathetic towards every single person in this show.
Every single one, dude.
Everyone has to have some sort of sympathetic angle. And it's not, I'm being a little hyperbolic with that, I think, because like bearded guy, he just kind of existed. And honestly, that's kind of what happened with PTA lady as well. Like, she's there. You kind of understand her motivations, but she's pretty one-dimensional. And it's like, why are we spending so much time with her? Like, what?
Doesn't make any sense, dude.
Yeah. And they don't. Sorry, go ahead.
That's what I just did not understand. Why are we spending so much time on her? And I think Jenna made a good point too with Joel being a soft monster. I think there are aspects of Joel that are brutal in this, but they've dialed it back some. I don't think he's just, maybe the term a soft monster is good in the sense that, it's still a monster, still brutal aspects that he does, but from what you've told me, not as brutal as the games. And I think the games just sound, from what you've told me, a lot better than this show has been, because I think it goes back down to the pacing. There's so many things they're including in this that are unnecessary to where you keep things going and going. Because when I think of something that's, if I was trying to differentiate myself from The Walking Dead, that's what I would do. Is we're going to make the infected the freaking threat, like Game of Thrones season 8. Season 1 through 7, because in season 8 they don't make the Night Walkers a threat at all. They're just really, the fight comes and it's over and done with.
Yeah.
But like, they're the threat, right? Like, they're big, they're here, like. And then you have these interspersed moments of, yes, humans are monsters too, along with the infected, and can be ruthless as well. But that's not the overarching theme. The overarching theme is that the existential threat is the infected. That's what they have to deal with. And maybe you have moments to where, you have these episodes to where you're seeing how horrible these humans are to Joel and Ellie and whoever else, right? And okay, but now they all have to team together because, oh crap, the infected are coming. Kind of like how this episode was in a sense at the end.
Yeah.
But just done better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, every time the infected are around, I'm pretty happy for the most part. Even though I think that there's some like dumb mistakes that are made, and I don't know.
How do you think about the Bruiser?
Bloater, but It
Did they say it was a bloater in the show?
They've confirmed.
I know it is.
Yeah,
but...
they called it a bloater in the after the episode thing.
Oh, okay, but not actually in the episode.
Maybe not. But the weird thing is that they kept bringing up the spores thing, and the bloater's supposed to be able to like throw them, like throw spores at you and other people, and they just didn't do it. And I'm like, I don't know. I'm not sure where we stand on kind of like the logic in the show at this point, but like just do it. Just do it. Just give us a like part of that. It's fine at this point if you can. The bloater throws some spores at someone and it infects them right away or what, or like like you could have done some interesting stuff with that, but
yeah, I don't want this to be another Walking Dead and it's traveling down that path. You know what I mean? As another Walking Dead.
Yeah. Well, it feels that way with like the overemphasis on the drama of the characters, and I know that I know people
less to deal with the actual infected.
Well, it's just taking away from the time that you could be spending with Joel and Ellie. I think that focusing more on Sam and Henry would have been the way that you go in this episode, or in not just this episode, excuse me, but in episode 4 as well. And that this whole scenario is they run into Sam and Henry. They're in a area where a group of people took out Fedra. You can go down the angle of like, oh, they wanted to be because this is kind of how the game did it. It's like this group of people wanted to be free from Fedra because they were awful to them, but then they became even worse people when they got into power than even Fedra was.
Yes.
That's kind of the scenario, but like this doesn't do it because she she becomes so obsessed and focused on finding 4 people that she lets everything go to waste. And I'm like, I don't know if I buy that.
Yeah, if that would actually happen. It's like, yeah, these 4 people matter, but oh no, here's this evidence that these, a ton of infected are about to pour out.
Yeah.
Something's going on. Because wouldn't they know what that was at that point?
They did. They knew exactly what was going on because we get an explanation as to why the infected are underground, which was fine. I'm like, all right.
What was that explanation again?
Fedra put them there.
Yeah, that's right.
They basically, and what's weird is like, again, and you call it nitpicking, but the question then becomes like, well, if Fedra had the ability to push all of the infected underground, why didn't they just exterminate them?
Yeah, and then on top of that, why didn't they do that everywhere?
All of these weapons, all of these weapons that this group has, they got from Fedra. So they had automatic weapons with lots of ammo.
Yep.
That seems to be the case. And so you could have systematically taken out all of these infected, push them underground, and then you could take them out, burn them alive, do whatever. It's a little weak, I think. But you go with it. All right. It is what it is. So yeah, we have all this like stuff that's going on with Sam and Henry, which I'm fine with, but again, let him spend more time with Joel and Ellie.
Yes.
Like
Don't make it so fast.
a lot of these characters, everything's so compartmentalized, and it's like it needs to be more within the realm of what's happening. Like Joel and Ellie need to be more involved in all of these side stories. Like they're the main characters. They're supposed to be the ones that we're seeing this whole thing through. Yeah. And it's like, oh, well, we're going to cut away from Joel and Ellie because now we got to talk about Bill and Frank. And now we got to cut away from Joel and Ellie because we got to talk about the PTA
Henry
lady and the bearded man.
PTA lady.
Yeah. And it's just like, why are
the PTA lady's brother? And
why isn't this all intertwined with Joel and Ellie? Like the experience kind of should, like really, and it should be that I kind of think to some degree that all of these events that happen, if Joel and Ellie are there for all of them and able to kind of like see all of this, is that it helps motivate the two of them at the end, and it helps them grow closer together through all of these events and seeing tragedy and loss and people fighting for each other and all of that happening, so that when you get to what may or may not happen at this point at the end of this season, there's an understanding as to why it is, and which is why like a lot of people are worried that they're headed in another direction with all of this.
It kind of goes back to what we said with The Witcher in season 1 and season 2. Henry Cavill, Geralt, is the star of the show, right? He's the glue. Everything, since it's called The Witcher, should be, for the most part, right, focused through his point of view. You're learning about the world, learning about everyone else, like along the journey you're going on with him.
Yeah.
You're not really doing these cutscenes to anyone else or these flashbacks as much as, especially in season 1, as you are into who the character is that you're learning about. And we haven't gotten that much with Joel and Ellie.
Yeah, they didn't spend enough time in those first couple of episodes where we are with them developing them, It's
Yes.
like that's your introduction to them, and we should be learning more about Joel and Ellie while they're on this adventure and they're meeting all of these other people. And it's just not landing for me ultimately. Like, again, I don't hate it. I think there's a lot of interesting and well done stuff in this. It's just odd to me the way that they decided to make the show work.
Yeah.
Or like to I guess the
narration
plotting
of the story.
the plotting for everything. It's kind of weird where it's like, okay, well, we have these first 2 episodes. Now we're going to do a hard cut to Frank and Bill. Okay, that's done. That's its own thing. It's over. Here's this letter that Bill left for Joel. And now we're moving on. They got the truck. We're moving on to the next episode. The next episode, there's like a ton of stuff with the PTA lady, and it's like, well, what are we doing? Like, why are we with this other character who ultimately, her whole thing feels completely unresolved to me.
Yeah.
And it doesn't, her death ultimately doesn't feel earned.
Nope.
It's just
who
sort
cares?
of, it's just sort of
an
like,
awful person.
Yeah, like, oh, all right, well.
Hey, my brother told me
she's
to
gone.
forgive you, but I'm not going to.
Yeah.
My brother was this great man, but apparently I didn't learn anything from him.
And that's the thing, man, is like, I think that there's potential there. I mean, like, you look at someone like Cersei Lannister, clearly it's possible to do these very intimidating, very powerful women.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if people are being honest, like, she just didn't have that vibe.
No, she didn't.
It didn't make sense as to why everyone, and they didn't really even give us, like you were saying, they didn't give us a good explanation as to why everyone was following her. It's just like, well, her brother was the leader. It's like, okay, so like that now makes her the leader. Like,
and nobody
no one challenged that.
And...
Yeah, no one said they could do it better. Like, you don't even have anything in this episode where the guy with the beard is bitter about the situation and he wants to take over.
Yeah.
So he like pushes her into like the bloater, and the bloater takes her out, and then he retreats with everyone, and so they're still in that city, and you know what I mean? Like,
which would make a lot more sense, right? Why is he so devoted to her?
Yeah, and
that's what I was wondering. What's his desire for wanting to be so devoted to her?
Yeah, it's weird to me, and I wasn't convinced by the whole scenario.
I wasn't either. Now, the whole Infecta coming up out of the ground and just now that whole scene was great. I mean, I was like, finally something.
Yeah. Yes. Oh, well, before we get to that final scene, if you don't mind. So this section through here is actually what I was kind of hinting at last week. I appreciate at the very least that they mentioned this whole like underground society down here. And this is from the game. A lot of the stuff that happens in here, you get this. Let me see if I can get back to it. This shot of a drawing, and it's Ish and Donnie, I think is what it says. It says our protectors. Now, there's a whole series of letters in the game where they talk about what happened to this group of people. Mm-hmm. And I was really, really hoping that we were going to get an episode about this, which at this point I don't think we will. They're pushing so fast through everything, and if it's true that we're just going straight into Last of Us Part 2 in the next season, this is kind of where we're at. But it would have been really cool because the whole idea is that he was kind of on his own, and he got tired of being on his own because he was like really good at surviving early on in the outbreak. Like he went out to sea and he was living out at sea by himself, and then he comes back into land because he has to find food, and he finds this underground area that seems really well protected, and he builds it up. But through the notes, you find out that he's pretty lonely, and he's like, well, there are these people that I've been trading with. Maybe I'll tell them that I want them to come live with me. And that's like when you saw this thing where it said like rules for like house rules. That all plays into it. And so you're going in the game, you're going through this underground area, and you're slowly learning about this group of people who were all living together, and then the tragedy that ultimately befalls all of them. And it's really cool, and it's just a really well-designed part of the game. And for a lot of people, especially when the game first came out, everyone was pretty much unanimously being like, that was one of the best parts. Like people were just all like, whenever people were talking about it and going through reviews of it, they were like, the whole thing with Ish and that whole storyline and being able to uncover that as we were going through this section, they were saying, especially at the time, and remember this came out in like 2013, I think. A lot of people were like, that is kind of one of the new standards for like how you can do something somewhat interactive and tell a story that isn't part of the main story.
Right.
There's other games that have done stuff like that have kind of been positively critiqued for the way that they've handled stuff that isn't part of like your A plot. And that was one of them. And so I'm glad that they mentioned it. It's still kind of one of those things where it feels like it deserved a little bit more time. They could have done an entire episode about Henry and Sam and Joel and Ellie down here. And that could have led up to, some of the other stuff. And it's so crazy, man, that because I think this episode was, this one was a little longer than 45 minutes, but that Bill and Frank episode was an hour and 20 minutes. The first episode was an hour and 20 minutes. And it's like you couldn't.
That Bill and Frank episode should not have been an hour and a half.
Yeah, it's like you couldn't have done a little more to develop Sam and Henry in order for what happens at the end to be more impactful.
Yeah.
Give us more time with them.
At least could have made the Bill and Frank episode way more entertaining.
Yeah, I agree.
You know what I mean? Kind of like how the game was, where you get introduced to Bill through, Joel being trapped in one of his traps. That sounded a lot better.
Yeah,
you could still have some of their backstory in there.
Yeah.
No issue with that, right? It's just making it way more entertaining and revving up the stakes and the tensions. I don't know. Everything just seems so laxed,
Yeah, and that's kind of the thing too, is that, and I guess I'll say this now, and then we can talk about the ending.
Okay.
I'm gonna get okay. We'll start from here. There was some stuff that was said, and you can just chalk it up to like actors kind of being dumb and not knowing what they're talking about, but it is a little concerning to a degree. The lady, and forgive me, I can't remember her name, but the lady that she's like the leader, the PTA lady.
Yeah.
She said some interesting stuff in this like quick thing that they had with her in the after the episode thing that made me go like, you realize that you're in a post-apocalyptic, essentially zombie infected world. And I'm trying to remember exactly what she said. I'd have to look it up. I should have clipped it. But it was, she was talking about like her character and like trying to describe her character and like all these things about her. And like, she's like this and that. And I'm like, he's like, do you know the show that you were in? It was just really odd. From that perspective. And then like it makes me think, that's why I like watching these end of the episode things, because between what they were talking about in last week's episode and what they talked about with this one, it's just like, did you even really want to make a show about essentially zombies? Or just like
really
a drama about people? And it's like, it's crossing into that line of being like, we took a property that people love and we're just kind of doing our own thing with it. And it's almost a little more gross because one of the people who like helped create that property is directly involved with this, and he's like fine with all of the changes. Okay, okay. So yeah, let's talk about this ending segment. Joseph.
I think Jen is right. They are using an IP to push their story.
Yeah.
That's what it's about. It push their agenda would be more of how I would phrase it. It's less about the story, and it seems less about the story, more about the ideology they want to push.
Yeah. Yeah, in some ways. I mean, like, I don't know if that's
not in all ways, but
that. I mean, that Frank episode, like
that
the Bill and
that
Frank episode, yeah,
seems that way
Bill
because
and
it's just so out of place. And then obviously, along with what the director himself said, but
yeah,
but
it's
like,
just
it's I don't know, like it's just so drama focused rather it being action and zombie focused. And again, understand, flesh things out, talk about the characters, yada yada yada. I get that and I want that, but I'm just tired of the trope of humans are the real monsters because we see that in The Witcher, we see that in The Walking Dead, we see that in so many other shows.
Well, and that being like a primary theme, right? Because like
yes.
I'm okay with that being there. This is a funnier version of that.
Or humans being like humans are monsters too, rather than humans are the real monsters. They're, they can, go that route as well and be evil, but that not be the overarching thing. But the main thing being, hey, this is the main threat to you.
Yeah, because it's a theme, and it's, again, this is something that we try to talk about a lot, where it's like the themes, the subversion of expectations, all these things that have gotten like a bad reputation because they've been used in terrible ways, or they've been justified to say this is why X thing is good, even though it's not. And you can, even if you can argue for why it's not, and people are like, no, you're just missing the point. Don't you understand the themes? And it's like, yeah, but the themes aren't everything. It's like it has to be written well, and it can't just be like pushing the themes at the sake of like character development and the rest of the story and logic within the universe that you're creating and like all that kind of stuff. And so the whole idea of like, it's like if this happened, of course people would revert into potentially being more violent, and it's okay to go through scenarios like that, but when it gets to the point where it's just like, it seems like all you guys have is being like, oh, well, let's just do a character study on what humans would be like during a time like this. Like, well, we've done this a lot.
Yes.
And a lot of times in better forms than this. And it's why, like, we've talked about it a little bit, but the major threat of the show being like the zombies, and then also people being kind of terrible to each other, sometimes it just doesn't feel like there's a lot of danger in the show,
Yes.
Even with this episode, like, this is one of the first times. And again, I should go back and watch his first two episodes again. I guess you can say like the clicker stuff was there. It's been there. I don't want to say that it hasn't, because that's not fair. It's been there, but it does seem isolated and within its own, like within certain episodes. And that threat and that looming threat of the clickers and the regular like runners and the bloaters, and and then you have like hunters and them coming after you for more than just the things that, like, your belongings or whatever the case may be. It does feel sort of like I was saying, the way that they're doing stuff with the characters, where it's sort of like compartmentalized. Some of this stuff really it's like, okay, in this episode, we're really not going to have any of the infected in it. It's really just going to be about like Bill and Frank. The infected are there, but they're not that big of a problem. The hunters are there, but they kind of deal with that too. This really is just about like their romance, and it's like, all right, here Henry and Sam, and this is really more about like this kind of new thing, because this wasn't in the game, but like, because like Henry wasn't like a snitch or whatever. He was just another survivor, like Sam and Henry were just survivors, like Joel and Ellie, and they run into each other in the city and decide to team up for a while, and so it's like, okay, well, we got them, and we need to like backtrack from the previous episode so that you can see some of the stuff from like Henry and Sam, and it's like, do we need that? It's like, is that enough development? Like, also, shouldn't have you have done that in the fourth episode? Like, can we just, like, why do we need to jump backwards? Couldn't you have gone in chronological order? Like, did we really need the like surprise ending at the end of episode 4 with the two of them standing over them? Like, you could have
right.
you could have worked it in there. I don't know. It's like my brain, like, sometimes it's like, would it have been better if you had just gone in like sort of the chronological order and also had Henry and Sam run into Joel and Ellie sooner, have the confrontation, they're with them through that episode. Even if you want to keep Soccer Mom in there and you want to have the same explanation, the whole part of episode 4 and 5 is that journey from the beginning of them meeting Henry and Sam to the tragic ending.
Yeah, and you could easily have, you're with Joel and Ellie, and as you're with them, you still meet Henry and Sam, right? And then through being with Henry and Sam, trying to get out of the city and focusing on that, like, they're telling you, hey, we're being chased by PTA lady because of X, Y, and Z, right? And they lie or something. Then eventually they tell the truth. Kind of the same exact storyline, but now you're cutting out a lot of the PTA lady because we don't really need her backstory. It doesn't matter.
She doesn't need to like kill the doctor. It can be, if you're going to keep that in there, it doesn't really matter. Like, she can just pick someone up that, and they're like, you can join us or whatever. And then like, they kill him. I mean, there's ways to have done this. You could have done, honestly, but they would never do this in a show today. They could have done something where if you wanted a woman in charge, she's significantly more attractive and she's manipulative that way. And like, eventually that catches up with her when, bearded, like I was saying before, like, bearded guy catches on and he's like, oh, so you've just been using me or whatever. And then he gets so mad at the end that he like pushes her in the hole with the rest of the, there's stuff you could do, but they would never, it's like they are willing to have like the woman be like the villain, but they'll never go to the same, it doesn't seem like they're willing to go to the same lengths with this stuff, Even Cersei in Game of Thrones got out of it pretty easy. Assuming that she was killed, like crushed by all the rocks in the last episode. I think it was the last episode where that happens. Anyway, all that being said, it's like there are ways they could do it, but I just wonder if, like, I know they are. I shouldn't even say I wonder. There's got to be stuff that's like, from a writing perspective within these industries right now, there's just lines that they're not willing to cross.
Yeah. And or make the lady, like you're saying, you can make her that way. You can also just make her, hey, a smart tactician, that like how she was able to convince people. And she's cunning, she's intelligent, all these different things, and it comes from whatever background that you want to make up for, and she's able to figure out the logistics of things and gather people together and get people on the same page to lead this revolt. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
And she could be someone that is, harsh when she needs to be, but willing to offer clemency and mercy as well. You know what I mean? So you have that dichotomy.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, the choice is up to you. I'm willing to forgive whatever you've done. You can come with me or not. And then if they choose not, then she ends up killing them or something.
Yeah. Oh well,
but she doesn't tell them that. She said you can either leave or you can come with us. But the only way through is through the bottom.
I think I would have appreciated a really, and I keep saying this in different ways, but a really like brutal approach to her character, where she's essentially convinced herself that because of the world that they live in and what's going on, that the only way that she can maintain power is by being the one who's willing to do things that other people aren't. Hurting a lot of people that come into the town, taking away from them, killing them. You could have gone down a route too, because I wonder, there's one more big group of people I think they're going to run. I think they're still planning on doing this in the show.
Yeah.
Let's see. That was episode 5. So episode 6. Okay. So we're probably running into this group in episode 7. That they do a lot of like horrific things to survive. And you could have had her being someone who also, in a different way than this group that we'll meet, having a similar approach to the point where you could have even given them like slaves, where it's like they not only do they capture people, kill them.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you could have done stuff to expand on like if you're gonna do this,
make them work to produce resources for them, and
give us a reason to really dislike her, but potentially also see where she's coming. Because that's when good writing, I think, works the best for villains. Not always. Sometimes you do want sort of, you're just like, oh, they're the evil, shadowy, evil one. That's fine. But with a show like this, where you can kind of have some of that moral gray area, if she is a good enough actress, and if you write it correctly, you can essentially convince the audience to be like, look, it's terrible what she's doing. I kind of understand where she's coming from within the realm of this world. And that's something that like Game of Thrones, for instance, and House of the Dragon did pretty well. Yeah. Is that there are characters that's like, no, they're not good people, but they're doing certain things and they're doing logical things because this is the environment that they're in.
Yeah.
And surviving and thriving in this and to not be like murdered in your sleep or, pick your poison. These are the things that have to happen. And
when you're honorable, these are the things that happen.
Yeah. Absolutely. So that's just, I mean, as far as that's all concerned. But tell me about the ending of this episode, Joseph.
Well, my camera just fell, but that's okay. I don't know if you heard that in the background.
No.
But yeah, man, I enjoyed the ending. When the infected came out, I was like, oh shoot. And then when that bruiser came out, I'm like, surely, and this guy was shooting at him, or the bloater, I should say.
Yeah.
And he was shooting at him. I was thinking, when it wasn't working, I'm like, okay, is he going to throw a grenade or something? But then he just kept on shooting at him. And that part, I was like, man, who's going to just keep shooting when it's not working? You know what I mean? Something of his caliber. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, you're going to do something. But just like the chaos of the situation, I enjoyed. And then it's just, they kept coming. Floods of the infected, almost kind of like World War Z.
Yeah. Not as goofy as World War Z. Remember in World War Z they stacked up so high that they got over the top of the wall or whatever.
Yeah, the wall in
Dude,
Israel.
talk about not following the source material. I don't know if you've ever read. I would actually recommend listening to the audiobook of World War Z if you ever have an opportunity. If you're not so sick of zombies, it's quite good, the audiobook, because it's a compilation of stories about different people during the zombie outbreak.
Yeah.
And so I think you have the story of I think there's a family, if I remember correctly, there's a blind Japanese man is one of the stories, and then they talk about the military's perspective. There's a few others, and it's actually got some pretty well-known people who read different parts of the book.
Nice.
It's pretty cool. I actually highly recommend it. I got a copy of it when I was at the beach 10 years ago or whatever, the audiobook, and I listened to it the whole week. I would just when I wasn't in the water or doing hanging out with friends, I would sit on the porch and just listen to this thing, and I was engrossed in it. Anyway, sorry, tangent.
But yeah, I enjoyed the part where Ellie goes into the Jeep or whatnot, the SUV, to get away from the infected, and then that the kid infected hops in there. I was like, oh, they got a kid infected. And then you see the kid infected kills the PTA lady. And it's just, I enjoyed the chaotic nature of this scene and being like, yes, the infected are the real threat.
Yeah. And
seemingly they're about to take over this town.
Yeah. They've wiped out this. I think the idea at this point, and because we won't see these people again, I think the idea is that that group has just been totally wiped out. And I get what they're going for, but no one is even did anyone? I can't remember. Did anyone actually tell the PTA lady like, "Hey, give this up"? Did the bearded guy? The
bearded guy would have been like.
I thought he may have said like.
I think he mentioned it,
but he didn't fight it, and then like there's no real like he's like.
Why would he just go with her and be like chase after these 4 people when it's like, no, we need to handle this. Screw you.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
I do. The designs, the art team in this, the costumes, all the people who are working on the sets, they need to be applauded. These people should have jobs for the rest of their lives. The stuff looks really, really good. It's too bad that I don't think the story holds up quite as well.
Yeah. No, production design, set design, costume design, makeup, superb in the show. That's what I mean. Like all the elements are there. Outside of the script, it's not, the script isn't terrible. It's just not, it's fine.
Yeah,
it's all right. I want so bad to be immersed and be into this. I just don't find myself I'm at peak likeness after watching the show. But the more I start to think about it and it dwells on my mind, the more it comes down.
The longer it's been going, that's how I kind of feel too. Is like I really want to like this. But I think, man, it's just gonna come out to be pretty average for me.
Yeah.
And there's a lot there's stuff to praise about the show. I mean, like honestly, man, at least it's not Halo. At least it's not Rings of Power. Yeah. At least there's things that we.
But I just don't want that to. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was gonna say at least there's things that we can compliment.
Yes.
And truly,
that's a good point.
And not even like grit our teeth compliment. Like, there's good stuff in this.
I like the first 2 episodes.
Yeah.
Good
setup.
Episode 3
good enough, I guess.
Was just odd, out of place.
Yeah.
Episode 4 was all right.
So I do want to,
episode 5, fine,
Yeah.
But
I do want to mention, I think it's so dumb that the bearded guy doesn't he realizes that shooting the bloater isn't doing it. Like he had to have realized this, right? This thing's charging him. And he doesn't go, maybe I should run.
Don't you think he would have something else on him, like a grenade or just something else?
Why is this his last stand? Like what? And it's just like that's it. That's the end of that character. He was just bearded, man. I was just like, oh, okay, so he's out of the picture. And that's kind of the way that I felt about the PTA lady, too.
Yeah, you have, they're getting away, and then, she comes in the last second to hold them by gunpoint. Immediately, when I saw that happen, I'm like, oh, yeah, she's about to die from a zombie. Because, why would you do that with all these infected around? You know what I mean? Like, just stand. It's one thing to, to just shoot and go ahead and do it while you see them, and then go back to defending yourself. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But another thing to just be like, oh, I gotta talk to you before I shoot and kill you, so that the infected have enough time to get me and kill me before I do it, because we're in a TV show.
Yep. And she also could have pushed this small child off of her very easily. This is
man. She's PTA, man.
This is like what, a 50-pound kid.
Hey man, she PTA. She may not be able to do it,
dude. This little infected would have jumped on her. She could have grabbed that thing and thrown it directly. Just swung it around, grabbed it by the feet and swung that thing around.
It's kind of like a female infected Chucky.
Yeah, it's just logic only matters in certain circumstances, I guess. But yeah, you kind of get the feeling like you can see now, like they wiped out this entire group of people. Yeah. And I guess, right, what they were trying to go for was that her obsession with going after these 4 people is what led to the downfall of her group. But it's just goofy.
Why were they infected there? Wasn't the
hole in the city?
In the city?
I guess you could just argue that it went. There was like a big underground area, sort of like what Joel and Ellie and them went through. I think that's probably what you're supposed to think, because there's like a mention of the infected like getting into that area. Like there's these little things here and there that aren't. They're not like this is exactly what it is, but they kind of are, I guess, alluding to that being the case. Yeah. Which, again, in the game, like you run into them in the underground area, so it makes sense. But then again, this whole like organization of people aren't as like predominant. They're just the people that are in your way when you're trying to get out of the city. You know, they want to kill you, they want to take your clothing and burn your bodies, and you know that whole deal. So that's kind of, well, we're not even done yet, but they wrap that up. It gets wrapped up in the whole like PTA lady and her group. It just gets wrapped up in a nice little bow, and we're done with that. It's done. It's over. We're moving on.
Move on.
So
and then we get, you know, a nice moment with, you know, Joel and Henry, and then Sam and Ellie and all that. And I think it was touching, the moments between Sam and Ellie and their connection.
Yeah.
I think that was really well. I wish there would have been more of it though before this point, just to get a bit more invested. But like a, you know, another episode maybe. But I don't, you know, I enjoyed how they played out. I just wish there was more of a connection in between.
Well, more time that they could have spent together, I think, would have really added to this ending. So they have a conversation about what scares them, and I was like, "Oh, okay, cool." Well, they're leading to exactly, because I wasn't completely convinced that they were going to go down the route that they go down in the games. It's roughly the same, except that in the game, Sam doesn't tell Ellie that he's been bit. He's really angry, and he basically like kicks her out of the room. And then she goes in to like wake him up the next morning, and finds him in a similar situation. So yeah, she finds out that he's bit. They have this exchange. This was fine. Honestly, this, as far as like a change from the game, didn't really bother me. Except I'm not sure how I feel about them kind of like. You remember how I was telling you that the whole like her being the key to everything might not be 100% like accurate, because that was kind of one of your criticisms of the first episode, that like are they just doing this? Well, Ellie's the key to everything.
Yes.
So it might not be that they were trying to get. And again, my whole like perception of the show is slightly skewed because I know where a lot of this is going. Her doing this and trying to like being like, oh, my blood is like the cure or whatever. Did that strike you as like her just having no idea, or did that strike you as like, well, maybe it's not true? Maybe like her being able to cure everyone, or them being able to find a cure because she can't get infected, that maybe that isn't the case.
I thought about that.
Okay.
I thought about like, you know, maybe they're not going to be able to extract or do anything with her immunity to it to help everyone else.
Yeah.
Well,
I'll table that for now, until we get closer to the end of the series, because there's like a lot of there have been in the past a lot of arguments about the potential for that and decisions that are made by characters. But we can save it because we still, you know, we got 4 episodes, so we'll see what goes down, and I'll there more of that will be brought to light at the time, I think. But you know, she tries to like, you know, say, well, maybe this will work, and you know, you can chalk it up to her being kind of desperate to help him, which I kind of like. I like that. This is, dude, honestly, it's one of the first times I think we've seen Ellie kind of being genuine with someone.
Yes.
And being more than just sort of this like snarky, angsty teenager. And it was refreshing. I don't know if it worked for everybody, but I did kind of appreciate this. I was like, okay, I think this is working for me. So then he asks her to stay up, right?
Yeah. And
Stay
then
Awake with Me.
she tries, and she ends up passing asleep, and then she finds him sitting on the edge of the bed, and then that's when she wakes him up, and he attacks her.
Yeah.
And then, Henry shoots and kills him, and then Henry self-deletes himself afterward.
Yeah. It really, I think it was a little longer in the show than it was in the game. The length of time I think actually works by delaying it a little bit longer, like he's really thinking about it and like running through a lot of the scenario, like what's going on in his head. I'll admit, again, from a game perspective, I wish they had just cut the episode right after he did it. And just like, because that's the thing, is like you just like leave people on that, and it makes me wonder if, even though they've been willing to do certain things in the show, like that is a gut punch to leave an audience on.
Yeah, right.
And I'll say it. I think it would have been the braver decision, if I can use the word. I think I
agree with that.
The more in like just straight into the gut would have been like, oh, all this crazy stuff's going on. Oh, Henry's infected, and then it's just like, oh, what's happening? And oh no, sorry, Sam's infected, and then you're like, oh man, it's like all this stuff's going through Henry's mind. Like, what's going on? He unalives himself, and then you just cut the episode, and then it's like directed by whoever or whatever, and you just leave the audience, because there's a lot of people that are into this. Like, no matter how I feel about it or you feel about it, there are a lot of people that like the show, and I think that would have been that hit. In the same way,
and I
like,
understand the reasoning too. This is one of the shows I can understand why people really like it. You know what I mean? It's one of those this isn't going to be my hill to die on type of show. Like, I can see the elements you're coming at to where you are really enjoying this. It's just, for me, like, we're talking about the things. There are elements of each episode that really work for me and elements that don't really work for me. I put this in like the C+ to the B range.
Sure.
But I can definitely understand why people would, really, really enjoy it, especially if you haven't, seen as many zombie movies and shows as I have. Not that I've seen all of them, but I've seen a ton.
Yeah, this seems to be connecting with genuinely, and I don't mean the people who are like, yay, the Bill and Frank episode, and they're like overpraising it. I mean the people who are genuine in being like, I like this show. And they happen to fall instead, like, because like I told you before, and I'm still pretty much there, it's like this is somewhere right in that average range, that 5 to 6 range for me. And I think for a lot of people, this really does roll up into the 7 or 8s.
Yeah, I think if it was less of a drama and more action oriented, I would be enjoying it better.
Yeah.
Mainly just because I've already gotten the drama with The Walking Dead, and when The Walking Dead started gearing more away from the zombies, I was just like, okay, I'm done.
Yeah.
And it was more about, again, not that you can't have the elements of the humans there, but I think it's imperative to keep the threat of the zombies or the infected, in this case in The Last of Us, as the main threat. Like, hey, no matter what's going on, they're the problem.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel you. Well, I mean, that's pretty much the episode. They bury them and leave, and they're headed out to find Tommy in the next episode.
Alrighty.
Yeah, I mean,
will they find him? Will Tommy die? The world may never know.
Yeah, I don't know. I
don't know anything about it, but I can guess where this is going.
I'm
not going to, because I don't want to put it in anyone else's head.
Yeah, there's still some interest, some things that I'm curious about how they're going to adapt. I'll be honest, I'm not really looking forward to next week's episode. But it's more of a, I just don't know. I don't know what they're gonna do. I mean, it's gonna be more of the drama stuff, and that's gonna take up a majority of the episode, and then we might get a little bit of action at the end. But it seems like they're so interested in the drama side of everything, and I kind of want more of like the infected stuff and them being in danger, and it's just like it doesn't seem to last very long, you know?
Yeah.
And it's not like I said in last week's episode, though I'll admit the opening of this one, you know, because remember I was kind of complaining, I was like, it's not like visceral enough, like the brutality's not really there. I was like, okay, they amped it up a little bit in 5. They got to a lot closer to like, okay, yes, this is kind of the like a better visualization through what you're seeing with these people taking over Fedra, what you're seeing at the end with the infected. This is a bit more of that, like, you are getting to see what this world is like when it can be very brutal and how people have to be willing to survive in this world. But then the rest of the time, it's like, okay, they're just walking around in abandoned areas, talking to each other. It's like,
Apparently, Bella Ramsey says that The Last of Us critics should get used to gay storylines. This is via Variety. They're going to have to get used to it if you don't want to watch the show because it has gay storylines, because it has a trans character. That's on you, and you're missing out.
Cool, Bella Ramsey.
Yeah, right? Like,
played
okay.
either of the games.
And neither you or Pedro did, so.
So, yeah, I mean, I don't know, man. It's like, it's just
tell a good story.
I don't care that, like, actors and, you know, a lot of these people don't really like critics or whatever, but it's so weird that they're so antagonistic these days.
Right.
When it's like, because there's a lot of people.
It's because of that old era. What it stems from is, you know, even when we were growing up, Hollywood was like, we're not Republicans, we're not this, we're not that, we're better, you know, that type of mindset. And then it, like, you have to keep on progressing and progressing and progressing and progressing. It's kind of like that one Disney exec that was like, I have a trans kid, I have 2 kids, 7 and 5 or whatever, and one of them's trans and the other one is pansexual. I'm like, you know, the odds of having a trans child is like extremely rare because they're a percentage of a percentage of a percentage of the population.
Yeah.
And then to have another kid that's pansexual, which is even rarer than transsexual, and then to on top of that to have the joint statistics regarding that, it's like, but you have to keep virtue signaling and out, you know, progressing people constantly, you know, and I think it boils down to what we said in our Rings of Power review. It comes back to narcissism with a lot of people, and I just think it's like, just tell a good story and like respond to fans and critics in a good way. You don't have to hate people.
I completely forgot about this. So in when Organized Chaos was talking to Eric last week, Organized Chaos asked him a question where he basically was like, you know, along the lines of, do you have any trans characters in your comic? And, you know, he's only put the one episode or the one thing out. And one of the things Eric has said is that he's like, I'm going to make, he specifically was talking about a gay character, but he was like, I'm going to make the most like beloved gay character that has ever existed in media. Like, it's like his goal. And so Organized Chaos asked him, he's like, well, you know, do you have a trans character in your story? And his response was like, not yet. And so it's this thing that's like, you know, you can do interesting stuff with people who are in like different situations like that, right?
Right.
It is the possibility there. It's your intention behind what you're doing. Like, are you trying to push a real world narrative, or are you trying to create an interesting character? Because there's a difference. And that's where, like,
difference.
Yeah, that's where a lot of people can't.
The difference is Brokeback Mountain and episode 3.
I guess.
From what I hear. I don't know.
I've only seen one. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
I don't just, and that's the thing, man. Is like, we've talked about this before, and I this is something that I think a lot of people have to kind of wrap their mind around. In the same way, this is kind of a conversation going on in the video game sphere as well. It's like, not everything is made for everyone.
And that's okay.
And that's okay. So like the whole that whole Bros situation where Billy Eichner or whatever was like pissed off because people didn't go see his movie. It's like you clearly don't understand the concept that not everything is made for everyone.
Yep.
Bros isn't going to do very well in flyover states. In rural America. It's not. It probably never will. And it's just something that like people have to get used to. It's like you may disagree.
Barney is not made for everyone.
Right. The Last of Us, especially The Last of Us Part 2, is not made for everyone because some people like good content.
Yep.
That being said,
The Rings of Power is not made for everyone.
no.
It's literally made for no one. It's
Not
terrible.
all of us have damaged brains.